Welcome to the Mustang Sports Feed. Join us as we talk to athletes and coaches from the Masters University to get the inside scoop on the latest happenings in TMU athletics.
Welcome, everyone, to the second season of the Mustang Sports Feed, the official podcast of TMU Athletics. My name is Tim Hajduk, Assistant Athletic Director, Events and Communications here at the Masters University. This is the second episode of our summer interview series. Our first episode featured the newest addition to the TMU coaching staff, Lisa Zamraz. The second episode featuring the second newest addition to the TMU coaching staff, Jared Goldberg, head coach, men's volleyball. Jared, thank you for joining us.
How are we doing? Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing I appreciate about you, Jared, obviously we spent some quality time up in the office together, but what I appreciated most was that when you came, I was only the new guy for about a week. I was hired end of January, and then you hopped on board about a week later. So once you came along, I was almost a veteran around these places.
Yeah, and I got probably 2 or 3 months, and Lisa came in and relieved my newest member duties here.
Yeah, so it's almost like we've been here forever. But you know, with you being relatively new, your spring season really lasted just over a month. It kind of went like a whirlwind. You know, some of our listeners may be a little unfamiliar with you. Want to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I been coaching on the men's and women's side for a while. I most recently came from Harvard University, where I've been there the last 4 years. I was the assistant coach for both the men's and women's team. Before that, I had stops at Morehead State in Eastern Kentucky on the women's side, and University of Mississippi, Ole Miss, on the women's side as well in my coaching roles. And I played in college at Grand Canyon University, so I've kind of been all over the country, and volleyball has moved me all around. And now I'm out here in Santa Clarita and glad to be here.
Yeah, you mentioned pretty extensive coaching history, you know, at the Division I level. What did you learn from those experiences that you've been able to take here as the head coach?
Yeah, I think every experience has been different, whether playing or coaching, and being around a lot of different styles. I've kind of learned what I like and what I don't like. And I think you learn that as a player. Sometimes you're sitting there like, if I was in charge, I would never do it this way. Or like, I really like that and I really, really want to try to implement that. And so I would say like my coaching philosophy is like a hodgepodge of kind of all the different places I've been. And I've kind of learned a little bit about what I want to do and what I want to kind of stay away from as well. And I'm sure I'll make plenty of mistakes, and I'm sure I'll have players that say, "Oh, I would never do it that way if I was in charge." But that's all right. We're learning and getting better.
Yeah, you mentioned your coaching philosophy. One of the first things you said when you were hired as head coach is that you wanted to teach your players to love Christ and love volleyball in that order. You know, I'd love for you to kind of expand upon that to the listeners at home.
Yeah, I think especially at Masters, it's really important that the athletes coming into the program are here for the right reasons, right? I don't want guys that are only here just because we have a men's volleyball team, because, I mean, there's not that many of them around the country, and so there's a lot of guys that want to play in college, and so I want guys that want to be here and want to grow spiritually, and I'm going to have guys coming in at a lot of different levels and ranges of where they're coming in spiritually, right? And that's just a fact of everyone here at TMU, right? Everyone's coming in a little bit different of a place. And I think the ultimate goal at the end of the day is that everyone's growing, right? And no matter where they're starting at, we want guys leaving here and growing spiritually, growing in maturity throughout their time here at Masters.
Yeah, you came from a very successful program at Harvard. You led the Crimson to their first ever national tournament appearance at the NCAA tournament. You know, to leave a program like that, there was obviously something about TMU that appealed to you. What exactly was that?
Yeah, at the end of the day, what it came down to is when I took that position at Harvard, I was in a much different place in my life than I am now. About a month before I took that position at Harvard, I had just gotten engaged. And as I left, I now have 2 kids and in just a very different family place. And so I was looking for a place I could settle down a little bit more family friendly, spend some time with the family. And I love the fact that it's a Christian university. Ever since I experienced part of it at Grand Canyon, obviously Grand Canyon's a little bit different than Masters, but I experienced a little bit of that atmosphere. I was really interested in coming back to that type of atmosphere at some point in my life, and the opportunity opened up and jumped on it, and now I'm out here.
Yeah. You mentioned the young family that you have. When you first came out here, you came by yourself. That your family, they hadn't moved out here yet. I mean, talk me through that time period. What was that like? How difficult was that for you?
Yeah, it was a bit of a whirlwind, and when I accepted the job in, let's see, that was middle to end of January this year, I knew it was going to be a very, very quick turnaround. Because ultimately, once I said, yes, this is for me, I said, all right, I've got to get out here as fast as possible in a way. We spent about a week and a half packing up our house in Boston. I had it shipped over, all my stuff and my car shipped over to California. And me and my wife and kids flew down to Texas to her family's house. And then I was there for only a day or two. Then I flew out here and waited for the stuff to arrive and got started with the job. And so definitely a really tough couple weeks. At the same time, it was good so I could actually get my feet under me a little bit. And my wife was a champ with taking care of the boys for a couple weeks and before they moved out here. And now things are finally starting to settle down just a little bit.
Yeah, well, definitely want to commend you because when that spring season was pretty wild, right? With all the sports going on at the same time, that Mason Nesbitt and I would be late in the office, whatever game we were hosting that night, writing articles, and usually we're used to us being there by ourselves. Here you were still in your office, working late hours.
11 p.m. and yeah,
yeah, you definitely put in the time, and that definitely translated onto the court. But you mentioned that quick transition. You had a season. I mean, when you got here, well, you probably had a week or two of practice before your first game.
Got to learn everyone's names. So,
I mean, as a coach, what was that like? I mean, you're literally just kind of thrown into the gauntlet.
Yeah, at the same time, like I knew this season was going to be a whirlwind, going to be really fast, not a whole lot of preparation going into it. And my goal throughout the whole season was not as focused on wins and losses as establishing a culture. Coach Allen did a great job of bringing in 15 guys that really wanted to be here and play, and he ended up leaving last summer. And so some of that culture, part of being a newer program, even we had just finished our second season in program history. So a lot of that culture is still trying to be built. And so that was a lot of the focus and purpose of this year, trying to get guys bought into who we want to be as a program. My first meeting with the guys was asking them that question of like, what do you guys want to be known for? What do you guys want to do? And they came up with a whole list, and I'm sure we succeeded in some ways and failed in a lot of others throughout the season, but that's an ongoing process at the same time. So we're working.
Yeah. And I mean, and going back to your family a little bit, it was awesome seeing, obviously your family's out here now. They were at every game in the stands. There's one game in particular, I remember your youngest son had the earmuffs on, and it totally reminded me of that vision of Drew Brees when he had his son on the field after winning the Super Bowl. And it just was such a cool thing to see your family there. I mean, how special is that? How much does that mean to you to have their support?
Yeah, it's fun. I can look back in the middle of a game as I'm walking back from a timeout, and I'm just looking up, and he's just sitting there and hanging out. And I've got one son that's about 9 months old and another that's about 21 months old, not 21 years old. And so two little boys running around, and my youngest is just starting to move around a little bit more now. And so it's been good. It's been a really crazy transition, but they've settled in really well now and getting used to it, and glad to have them around as much as possible. They swung by probably 4 or 5 practices throughout the year too. And my oldest one, Silas, just runs after volleyballs the whole time in the gym. And he's actually a basketball fan for some reason. He'll just yell basketball hoop over and over and over again and point to the basketball. So Kelvin might have a rising star in the class of 2038.
There you go. It'd be fun to keep him in the TMU family for sure. But yeah, in the shortened season, obviously you mentioned you wanted to establish the culture that you're looking for here. You coached the team to its first 2 Golden State Athletic Conference wins in program history. You took 12th ranked Ottawa, Arizona to 5 sets. I mean, how excited are you for the future direction of this program?
Yeah, I think we're definitely trending in the right area. We only graduated a couple guys. We're bringing in quite a large class this year. Right now, we've got 6 committed. I wouldn't be surprised by August time. It's 7, 8, or 9. And so trying to figure that out right now, bringing in some pieces that might be able to help. And ultimately, I'm going to take anybody that's the right fit for the school and it's going to make our team more competitive. And so we're trying to build that competitive spirit in the gym, and we want guys that want to compete hard and really strive for excellence. And so some of that, some of those close games are definitely a challenge. Taking Ottawa to 5, I think we definitely could have won that game, and we ended up playing them 4 times, and there's probably 2 of those 4 that we definitely had a shot at. Had we played a little bit better, we're a little bit up and down and all over the place. If we can become a little bit more steady, we're going to be a better team. But part of that's like learning how to win, and part of that's the culture. And in terms of being a new program, that's tough to figure it out, right? It's a little bit of a hump. If you can get over that hump, you're going to be a pretty good team. And so we're just trying to figure that out. And at the same time, we've got a couple of really good teams in our conference. Vanguard was in the national semifinals this year and one of the top teams in the country. Menlo is, I think, going to be probably a top 5 team in the country. They didn't have a season this year. So we've got a couple top teams in our conference, and we could be a good team and not be number 1 still. And so we're just trying to figure out how do we become an excellent team, because it's going to take that in order to win our conference.
Yeah. Hey, you talked about playing Ottawa 4 times. So you had Ottawa and ACU in the GSAC East Division. You each played them 4 times. I mean, as a coach, you're playing the same teams over and over again. They know you really well. You know them just as well. What was that like as a coach, trying to make adjustments week in, week out?
Yeah, we definitely changed some things, especially against Ottawa. We had a couple serving lineups that threw them off, and then that first weekend we had a bunch of servers doing deep standing float serves, like way back against the back wall, and they were all over the place. And the second weekend coming in, I saw their coach hitting them in warm-ups, and so we went the exact opposite and went all jump servers. And so we're just going back and forth, and ultimately our playing philosophy is we're going to do whatever's most uncomfortable for the other team. Right. And so we want to be a team that's tough to defend, and we have to ask the question of what puts a lot of pressure on the other team, and let's go ahead and do that. And so it's a lot of that throughout the year.
And one guy who was pretty consistent all year long, Brandon Botdorf, first all GSAC selection in program history. Talk about his season, but also what's his ceiling over these next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy with a pretty heavy arm, and that's his biggest strength. And so he's a quieter guy, but pretty competitive. And so just trying to get him continue to come out of his shell. And truthfully, this past year, we had a couple guys that were leaders that were older, namely CJ. He was one of our big leaders. He didn't play a ton, but he kind of led the guys. And so we're losing someone like that, and we're trying to figure out, how do we have guys step up? And so Brandon's one of those guys, he showed it on the court this year. We're trying to get him to step up in some other areas as well and be a leader for this team. And he's got quite a high ceiling. He's a rather talented player physically. Now we've got to get the guys to come together and play together as a team.
Hey, you mentioned losing a guy like CJ, losing a guy, Jacob Hafner.
Yeah.
But you have a lot of guys returning as well.
Yeah.
I mean, who else in particular are you excited to have back?
Yeah, so I think Ben Herb had a really good season as well. Brandon ended up making GSAC. I could have seen Brandon and Ben making GSAC. I think Ben was right on kind of the cusp, right along those lines, as I was trying to advocate for a couple more votes for Ben there. I thought we could have had 2. But Brandon and Ben's numbers are both very similar. Ben's a guy that comes in with a whole lot of experience. He's the old man on my roster. And he had played 4 years at a Division III school back in Pennsylvania, and he's now in the seminary. And I think he might be the only seminary student that's a varsity athlete at Masters. So that's pretty neat, having him as part of that, part of our group too. And so got a couple pieces returning, and then we've got some guys that are coming in that I'm sure we'll compete for spots right away as well. And so we got a pretty strong incoming class. We'll be releasing that later this summer. As Tim, I'm sure you're working on that a little bit. But excited to have the new guys as well as all the returners coming back, and a little bit larger of a roster. Probably be right around 20 guys, where this past season we were at 15. 20 is probably a better number for depth for us. So if we have one or two guys out, we're still able to compete at a high level in practice every day. So excited to have that, and excited to get that competition in the gym.
Yeah, and among the returning guys, I mean, you have quite the group of characters. I mean, how fun of a group is that for you to be with on a daily basis?
Yeah, no, they're a good group of guys, and they work hard, and sometimes we got to get them to zone in on exactly what we're working to, and so it's a balancing act every day, and that's true with a lot of just college athletes, right? And so we're just trying to make sure the guys can zone in on their primary focus here. And that kind of goes back to what I was talking about of sometimes losing those games that you shouldn't have. Sometimes that's a result of that. They were not as focused on what our goals should be. And so just trying to get better in those areas, and trying to stay consistent and getting these guys to grow spiritually, physically, volleyball players in the classroom, in every area of their life, just trying to get them to grow up.
And going into next season, I mean, you'll have a full off season to work with your team, which obviously you didn't have this past season. I guess what's the primary focus that you're trying to implement going forward?
Yeah, we're going to be trying to run a little bit newer of a system for us. I think whenever you kind of implement a new system, you're going to get a little bit worse before you get better. And so that was something that I didn't really do too much, considering I came in a week before season started. I didn't think it was really worth it to try to revamp everything, right? We just wanted to get slowly better in some different areas throughout the season. But as soon as season finished, we're starting to implement a little bit faster of an offense. We need to get a little bit better ball control wise in order to be able to execute that offense. But we're really going to be spending a lot of time training on that, and we'll be scheduling some pretty high-level opponents this next year, and even in the off-season, trying to get that going and put some pressure on the guys, and so see if we can hold under that pressure. And so should be fun, should be interesting, trying to get some Division I teams on the schedule for this next year. And just so, if we play those guys, if we can hang in there with them, teams like Menlo and Vanguard will be not as big of a deal, essentially, at the end of the day.
And looking more towards the immediate future, you got your elite camp coming up next month, end of July. What are you looking to get out of that, and what are you hoping the campers will experience during that time?
Yeah, looking for some high level training, and so it's a elite camp. It's for high school age players, and a lot of volleyball players are a little bit older because you don't really start playing volleyball until a little bit later. And so we're just trying to get some high level players, some recruits on campus to kind of see the school, just because of where we're situated, kind of tucked back into a neighborhood a little bit. We're not a campus that everyone in Santa Clarita or Southern California has seen it all, right? You don't just naturally drive by. So trying to get people on campus, see the place in person. I think once we get the right fit of kid on campus, I think it's a pretty easy sell. So that's the challenge and what we're trying to figure out for the elite camp, and trying to get as many players as we can and trying to make it a high level camp.
Yeah, well, if you haven't booked your spot, go to masters.edu/summer camps. You'll get quite the experience with Jared Goldberg here, former collegiate setter at Grand Canyon University. And you're using that camp as a recruiting tool.
Yep.
When you recruit athletes, obviously from a physical standpoint, you're looking for certain things, but also what are you looking for as far as their character and from a faith perspective as well?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to figure out the most right now. That's the biggest difference in recruiting versus, when I was at Harvard versus here. A lot of the recruiting in volleyball is done through the club scene. And when I was at Harvard, I would talk to club directors or coaches, and they would typically have an idea of where their kids were at academically. What I'm finding is the challenge. I talk to those same people, and I ask, where is this kid at spiritually? They have no idea. Absolutely no idea. And so it's just for a lot of club directors or coaches, that's just not a conversation they have. And the most common answer I'm getting is, maybe this kid goes to a Catholic school. I'm like, okay, like it just shows like you just haven't had those conversations with the kids. And so right now I'm reaching out to some of the private Christian schools, but also kind of shooting a shotgun and see where it hits, and casting a really wide net, and then seeing who I can get on the phone, and trying to find the right fit of a kid through there. And I'm gonna strike out a lot of times, but for the right kid, it's worth it, right? If I can get a couple of the right kids, and really I only need 4 or 5 kids a year coming in. So if I reach out to 200 a year, 200, 300, 400, hopefully I can find those 4 or 5 kind of fit exactly what we're looking for as a volleyball program and what we're looking for as a school. Trying to find that balance between the two.
You know, as we wrap things up here, really the question that our listeners, I'm sure, have been dying for me to get to here at the end is, how do you grow a beard that marvelous? I mean, if you haven't seen this thing, obviously you got to come to games to see the product on the court, but also I think worthy of the price of admission is this great beard that you got growing from your chin. What's the key?
The key is patience. So inspired by Duck Dynasty's Uncle Si. I named my kid Silas after him. So yeah, no, but just let it go. Just let it go. Yeah. Tim, you might need to let it go for a little bit longer, but maybe you can get there someday.
Yeah, I'll say I just shaved yesterday, so it might take me several months to get what you're growing there. But no, and I'll say, I mean, just for comparison's sake, you know, sports fans at home, you know, Brian Wilson, Ryan Fitzpatrick's of the world, their beard's got nothing on what Jared's got going on.
You know, Ryan Fitzpatrick is actually a Harvard grad himself, so.
So apparently the key is
inspiration.
And boss, is it the cold winters you got to get through?
It's the cold winters.
Well,
so we'll see if this thing lasts through the hot summer of Southern California.
That'll be a good question. But Jared, really appreciate you taking the time this morning. We look forward to seeing you guys out in the court coming up next spring.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And if you haven't already, give TMU Men's Volleyball a follow on Instagram, TMUM Volleyball. Thanks again, Jared.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Mustang Sports Feed. For more information on TMU athletics, visit gomustangs.com. To learn more about the Masters University, visit masters.edu. We'll see you next time.